Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz, your host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, I'm going to be breaking down some Raiders free agent targets after June 1st. If you don't know, June 1st is a really important date in the National Football League. I'll explain why it's important here in just a moment. But for the Silver and Black, you got $36.2 million in salary cap space, fourth most in the National Football League. So to me, there are areas where this team can improve, and I know that I'm not the only one from the nation that feels the exact same way. I like what Pete Carroll and John Spytek have done. I've said it 100 times probably this offseason. But when you look at this roster, there are still areas that I believe that this roster can improve upon, and the fact that we have the money to go out there and do it, I'm going to sit up here and say I want the Raiders to at least go out and sign one player after June 1st. And if you agree with that statement, if you believe that this team can get better, then seriously, hit that like button, because coming up here on today's show, I'm going to go through, look at the Raiders' biggest team needs, and I'm just going to talk about which players I would go out and target in free agency based on those team needs. I'll also say none of the players are ranked. The team needs, though, they are ranked in a sense. All right, let's first talk about, though, why June 1st is such an important date in the National Football League. June 1st is a key date in the NFL because it marks the point when teams can designate a player's release or trade as a post-June 1st move. This designation allows the team to spread the player's dead money, salary cap charges for a player no longer on the roster, over 2 seasons instead of absorbing it all on the current year. This provides teams with more flexibility in managing their salary cap, particularly with veterans who may be released or traded after this date. Now, I will say this, the Raiders, in terms of post-June 1st, we already know that the Raiders did this earlier this offseason. You know, Andre James was a name that was thrown out there. Gardner Minshew was a name that was thrown out there. But for the Raiders, and why I wanted to make this show, it's because there will be other NFL teams that make monumental moves based on June 1st. So could the Raiders try to either A, hop in front of some of those other teams, or B, just look at the current free agents that are already out there that don't get signed by some of these other teams? Let's first look, though, at, I would say, the biggest need right now for this current regime, for this current squad. I'm going to go with free safety, and I like what the Raiders have in the safety room. Based on some of the things that I've been hearing from OTAs, I do think Harper is going to be a player to at least, keep an eye on. Jeremy Chinn's a stud. Isaiah Paul-Amal, I think, is a really good number 3 safety. But we don't have a true center fielder, and I don't really think that we have a true coverage free safety, which does scare me considering the fact of just what this defense currently is underneath Patrick Graham. Now, I will say this. The Raiders have the money, and free safety is always an intriguing position, because I think it's a position that's kind of looked at as the running back position sometimes of the defense, where players are underpaid. And right now, the amount of talent that's still out there on the open market needs to be noted. The first player I'm going to bring up here is Justin Simmons, which if you tune into this show and you're surprised by Justin Simmons, then you're not subscribed. Hit that sub button. 31 years old, has started 31 games over the past 2 seasons, at least 60 tackles, 2 INTs every year since 2017. He comes with that AFC West experience. We saw him a lot with the Denver Broncos, and I know he's coming off a little bit of a down year with Atlanta, but Atlanta in general is coming off a little bit of a down year. He did play mainly free safety, but he also lined up in the box and in the slot. And if you follow the Raiders, at least at all, you'll know that we could use some extra help in the slot, which is why I like Justin Simmons. Let's go to a little bit of a younger option here, Julian Blackmon. He's going to be 27 years old, 62 games started over the last 5 years, 7 interceptions the last 2 seasons with 174 tackles, a PFF coverage grade, 72.6 in 2023 and 73.5 in 2024. My big underlining factor here with the Raiders is if we're going to go out and get a safety, let's go out and get a guy that can cover. Or we're going to go out and get a guy with some versatility / might have a coaching connection to Spytek or Pete Carroll. In this case, Jordan Whitehead's got that connection to Spytek, to Tom Brady, because they won a Super Bowl together, right? And when you win a Super Bowl with somebody, you already have that extra layer of, we'll just call it friendship, workmanship, whatever you want to say. 28 years old, 101 games started in his career, and you're going to see me talk about a lot of these guys that got some serious games under their belt because our secondary is young, and not a lot of players have a lot of big-time game experience. He did play mainly free safety, but he also lined up in the box and in the slot last season. Let's go to another safety here. He's getting up there in age, 32 years old, 8 games played last season, 145 games played throughout his career, but he had 5 years with Pete. And when you go back and you look at the really good years of Quandre Diggs, they were with those 5 years with Carroll. Carroll has said multiple times this offseason that he wants to bring in guys that he knows that he can trust. He wants to bring in guys that know what the philosophy is that he's going to be able to put out there and get on the field. Because I am concerned about the Raiders secondary, I would look at Quandre Diggs being a very similar fit, and I get it, a little different. Remember Casey Hayward a few years ago for the Raiders? Everyone's like, he's 31, he's washed. But he knew that Gus Bradley defense like the back of his hand. I think Quandre Diggs and his experience with Pete Carroll could also be that reliable veteran that was pretty damn good last season. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. And if you're like, Mitch, what the hell is a pinned comment? It is the number one question that I want you to answer from this video. So you're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down. Literally, the number one question. I want everybody to go answer it. If the Raiders can only sign one free agent in the month of June, who should it be? My answer coming up right here after this YouTube ad break. The name that I'm going to sit up here and go with is Julian Blackmon, and I say that because he's 27 years old and he's got some room to grow. And I want, if we go out and get a player at this point, I kind of want him to be able to grow with this secondary. But let me be very clear. Justin Simmons, come on down. White, like any of the free safeties that I just mentioned, I would be ecstatic if the Raiders did end up bringing them in, because I think no matter what, they would help out this roster. Let's go to nickelback, slot corner, whatever you want to call it. I will say this, during Raiders OTAs, they've been going with a lot of 5-man fronts, and they've been using Eric Stokes and also Darian Porter as their top 2 starters. I know what the depth chart says. It's because I really thought Jacorian was going to be a starter. He's still recovering a little bit from an injury. But overall, the Raiders have been using Stokes and Darian Porter as their top 2 corners. And then when they need to get somebody in the nickel, they're actually bringing in extra safeties. So a lot of extra safeties. But my other reason, though, here of why I want somebody to go out there in the nickel is because our nickel coverage defense right now is weak. No disrespect to Darnay Holmes. No disrespect to, again, some of those lower-level corners on our depth chart. The depth is lacking, and I think that the Raiders could also use a veteran, maybe somebody like a Mike Hilton, who's 31 years old, still playing solid football in the slot, 4 straight years of over a 70 grade on PFF, 123 games played, 56 games started, 23 starts the past 2 years, and when you add somebody that is a veteran and you put them on the inside, I only think it helps your younger players, because I think that right now in our secondary, we need an extra player coach because we just got a lot of young guys going out there and competing. But when you look at the last 2 years, Mike Hilton's still playing at a high level, and he's the top, I would say, slot corner on the market. Let's go to another name here. This one's more just based on connection. Troy Hill did sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season, played in only 8 games, but 202 slot snaps. Okay PFF grade overall, but Hill has that connection with Spytek. Again, Tampa Bay brought him in last season. Also, Hill's been on some Rams teams, and there's some connections through some Sean McVay trees, if you will. But those are the top 2. The number one name that I would say I consistently get asked about, and I'm not saying that I'd be mad if the Raiders went out and got Asante Samuel Jr., but all I'm trying to sit up here and say is this. Asante is not a nickelback. Like, the Raiders are very confident in their outside cornerback play, and it also, like, Samuel doesn't really fit that mold of what a Pete Carroll outside corner looks like. Long, lanky, super athletic. That's just not Samuel. So I do want to bring him up because I already know for a fact that I'm going to get asked about Samuel in this video, and if I didn't include him, people will be like, well, why didn't you put him in? Here's the thing. His dad was the slot. Asante Samuel Jr. is not. He has played predominantly on the outside. But again, if they brought him in, I wouldn't be upset about it. Before I get into some more players here that I think that this regime should go out and target after June 1st, we do have some Raiders gear that is on sale. Where you got a friendly reminder here. Father's Day. It's right around the corner. And I don't know about you. I don't really buy myself anything. Like, I'll buy Chuck, my dog, something. I'll buy my fiance something. But for myself, the only things I really feel like I buy myself anymore are some Raiders gear. So whether you need a hoodie, whether you need a brand new cap, we got hundreds of different things on sale. Also got stuff in there for the special person in your life, for the kiddos. chatsports.com/Raiders sale. That link will be available to you all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Let's go to linebacker here. I think it's the next Raiders team need that I am more confident in this Raiders linebacker room now than I was after the NFL draft. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that this linebacker room does have some upside, but there is still a lot of unknowns in here. I've been talking to Tommy Eichenberg. I've been talking to Cody Lindenberg's team. Amari Gainer's been doing a lot of good stuff. Jalen Smith's been stepping up. But if Devin White and Landon Roberts are still considered the top two linebackers on this squad, and if our secondary is built the way that it's being built, there's still a potential, I think, to just add some talent on this squad, or at least looking for a player that can cover at the linebacker position. To me, the number one LB that the Silver and Black should consider is Kyzir White, 29 years old, started 17 games last season. Overall, pretty versatile linebacker. He can line up in the slot, 52 snaps in the slot last year. Also, 481 tackles the past 4 seasons. That is an average of 120.3 tackles per season. I know Kyzir White might not be, a fan favorite because he was a former Charger player, but I do think that he could help out this team at linebacker. Let's go to another name here, and it's going to be Juwan Bentley, and you're probably seeing a very similar trend of here are players that I want the Raiders to target, and then I'm just going to throw in another name based on connection because relationships and connections really do matter to this regime. Bentley is a good coverage linebacker, and he was Tom Brady's teammate from 2018 to 2019. Also, he had 100-plus tackles from 2021 to 2023. He injured his pec, and he missed 15 games last season. He's still out there on the open market when you're considering a linebacker that does have past injury concerns. I'm not totally shocked that he's still out there, but those are the two linebackers that I think make the most sense for the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's go to another position here of need, and you can always add talent to your defensive line. You can never have too many edge rushers. And when you're in the AFC West and you got to go up against Patrick Mahomes and you got to compete against all these great quarterbacks in the AFC in general, you better have a team that can get after the QB. And, well, Philadelphia, they did that, and they gave Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid fits in the Super Bowl. And I'm trying to replicate what those teams did. Now, I get it. We have Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz. I've actually been hearing a lot of good stuff about Tyree Wilson, which is encouraging. But yet again, there is just a lot of unknown commodities out there. And because there's a lot of unknowns, I am going to be somebody that sits up here and says, well, where could we potentially make an improvement? To me, there is one edge rusher that I would sit up here and go, we should go out and get. And quite frankly, it's been a player that I've talked about before, and I kind of talked about it more as like a Christian Wilkins replacement if he is unable to be healthy, just because we have so many tweeners at defensive tackle and defensive end. But I'm going to bring up Jadeveon Clowney. And Clowney's 15 sacks the past 2 seasons, and he could play defensive end, right? You put him over there at defensive end. Also, the Raiders are looking at some stand-up outside linebackers during the NFL draft, like a Jalen Walker. He also played for Pete Carroll in 2019, second highest PFF grade of his career with 87.3 on 650 snaps. Now, I know that the Raiders have a lot of these, like I call them, tweeners. Tyree Wilson, tweener. J.J. Pegues, tweener. Tonka Hemingway, tweener. A lot of guys that can play defensive tackle and defensive end. What I would do is let Clowney stay on the outside and force one of those tweeners, or maybe all the tweeners, to play a little bit more defensive tackle. Another edge rusher that I'm going to bring up based on coaching connection is Shaquille Barrett, Shaq Barrett. Played in only 1 game last season. He signed with the Miami Dolphins. Then he retired. Then he asked to get reinstated by the NFL, and then he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and played in only 1 game. So we know how important Barrett is to Spytek. We know how important Barrett is even to Tom Brady. They won a Super Bowl in 2019. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And a lot of the things that the Raiders have been doing this offseason is they've been replicating what Spytek and Tampa Bay did in 2019, what Philadelphia did last season, because those are the 2 teams that I go back and I sit here and I say they dominated Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And I don't know if anybody else can say that. So for them to go out and replicate that, I get it. Also, 7.5 sacks the past 3 seasons in 25 games. Only played in 1 game last season. But if Shaq Barrett's healthy, and if the Raiders want to bring in a leader that they can put out there on the edge and let him just get after the quarterback, like, if you bring in Barrett, you probably got to play him like 200 snaps. Only on 3rd down. And I'm okay with that. Now, I do also want to get in here to just giving you guys a little bit of information on my Raiders' upcoming live streams. And I bring this up because I was talking to Rebel/Chugs, and we actually have these games switched. So Monday, Week 5, is against the Indianapolis Colts. Tuesday, Week 6, is against the Tennessee Titans. We can blame Chugs for this one because I got it right in my notes. So that one's on Chugs. Bottom line is this, though. I am going to be live Monday, and I'm going to be live on Tuesday for a Madden Sim. And if you don't know, Tuesday is going to be my final live show. Well, I shouldn't say my final live. My final live show as a single man. I'm going to get married on Friday. It's a pretty crazy, crazy thing. But pull up. Let's have some fun. My dad might be here. It's going to be a wet and wild day. Tuesday on the Raiders Report. I better see you there. Let's go to the final one, and I'm going to put this one as a question mark for Wilkins because there is still a lot of unknowns regarding Wilkins. And I'll be real. I'm filming this video on Friday, May 30th, so hopefully no new information comes out in that time. But I was told this late last night that Wilkins really might not see the practice field. And again, practice field, there's mandatory minicamp coming up. But again, training camp is late July. I was told by a pretty good source that Christian Wilkins might not see the field until training camp. And if the Raiders are legitimately concerned about that injury, could they potentially try to go out and replace him? Now, here's the bottom line. You're not going to be able to replace Christian Wilkins, right? He's one of the highest paid defensive tackles in the National Football League from top to bottom, and I think that their replacement is somebody that they already went out and either drafted, and Tonka Hemingway, J.J. Pegues. You could also look at a Jonah Lalu, maybe even a Lecky Fotu. But this video is about free agent targets. And if I know that replacing Wilkins is not going to be possible, what I'm at least going to try to do is bring what Wilkins brings. That's a fun atmosphere, and that's also extra competition. To me, I'm looking at connection, and I'm also looking at competition, which is why I'm going to bring up Quentin Jefferson. And I don't even think Jefferson would make the squad. I'll be very transparent. Really don't even think he'd make the squad. But he is somebody that is very valued by this Raiders organization. Played 5 seasons with Pete Carroll, 2016 to 2019, also in 2022. He was on the Raiders in 2021, and when you hear Max Crosby, and if anybody listens to Max's podcast, he often talks about players that, have kind of helped him grow and mature into the player that he is, and he has always spoke very, very highly of Jefferson and just the respect that he has for that guy. So 32 years old, played 252 snaps last season, connection with Pete Carroll, respect from Max Crosby, and he brings that veteran presence that I do think could help this team in June, in July. And if he doesn't make the team, he don't make the team. But if he does, it's going to help us out. But more importantly, without Wilkins, we need a lot of young defensive tackles to step up. And if he helped out Max Crosby, why can't he help out the rest of our DTs? I appreciate all of y'all tuning in to today's show. And again, this entire week, I'm not really going to be available. I do get married on Friday. I appreciate everybody that has already sent me some good well wishes, but I mean this. I want y'all to pull up on Tuesday. We're going to party. I know I couldn't invite all y'all to the wedding, but we will party on Tuesday like it is the wedding weekend. And if the Raiders end up signing anybody, I will do my best to get you a video. If it's breaking news this week, Chugs is probably going to be the one that has to end up covering it. Enjoy the entire week. And again, if the Raiders make a move, I promise you, I'll keep you up to date.